Hey everyone, it is I, yet again, and again I am screen recording. And as you could hear in the background, there are birds making a lot of chatter. Hold on, let me move the bell that I have beside me. By the way, if you haven't heard it, there's your listening, there you go, there's the bell. Anyway, since I've seen many people doing, I'm like, do you know what, I'm going to make my own list. So here is my list of the top 4 retired excursion stars that I enjoy seeing. Now, this was inspired by many people, so I'm not going to go through the list because there were just so many. The reason I'm doing number four is because I could only really think of 4 locomotives, and I could only get 4 locomotives pictures because, I could only think of 4 locomotives, and I could only get 4 locomotive pictures. I wouldn't include like 2174 or but I'm not going to risk my entire channel just for a few images, and as you could hear, motorcycles going off in the background. So without any further delay, let's get into my top 4 favorite retired steam excursion steam engines, whatever. Let's just get on with it. So number 4 is the Roaring Camp Railroad's number Sonora. Now this locomotive was, I'm going to go off with memory, I think this was built in 1912 by the Lima Locomotive Works in, Lima, Ohio. I think the first railroad that operated for was the West Side Lumber Company, and it worked there for a while. Then it was acquired by Roaring Camp, I think. I don't know. And it worked there for quite a long time. Then it was overhauled, I think, 2007 and returned in 2009. And right now it's, I think it's getting firebox works, as you can see with the smoke box door removed and part of the firebox, I think like the back of the boiler, also sitting by the locomotive. So yeah, this is I think this was the first ever locomotive that I ever saw, the first narrow gauge locomotive, so I definitely recommend checking it out. You may not be allowed in the engine house, but hey, if you're lucky, you may see it if you peek in. Alright, let's get on to number 3, which is quite an interesting locomotive because not that many people have covered it. Well, nobody's covered this locomotive, so number 3 is Reading Camelback number 1187. Now, I used my model of it because, well, why not? I'm going to show it. So this locomotive was built in 1903 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works for Reading, and after serving there for 60 years, which is pretty impressive, it was sold to like a iron company or power plant. I can't remember the name, but anyway, it served there for quite a while. Then it was bought by this birds. Can you not interrupt me? Never mind. It was sold to the Strasburg Railroad in, I think, 1963, where it served there, and exactly, like, I think 6 weeks later, these birds, I'm telling you, six weeks later, it was downgraded to switching maneuvers, assisting with the runaround maneuver at the station because, well, it couldn't handle longer trains because they were using the wrong coal. They were using, I think it was bituminous coal, but it's a Reading engine. It needs anthracite coal. People should know this. But anyway, it did that job for like 4 years, and then it was retired and sat at Strasburg for over 50 years. Yeah, they didn't donate it. No one bought it. It just sat there rusting away with the cab all cracked and broken. Just look up 11A7 or Reading 11A7 and you'll find it. And then it was bought by the Age of Steam Roundhouse in, I think, 2020. And the story with this model is, after the live stream, I built my own, and it is still around to this day. I think it's been almost a year since I first built it. So yeah, that's number 3 on my entry. And number 2 is, well, again, quite an interesting one, because usually it gets like number 1, but I think another guy, can't remember his name, put it at number 2. I think it was like, I can't remember. Oh, well, number 2 is Norfolk and Western Class A, number 1218, which is, well, people are probably running, wait a minute, hold up, which locomotive got first place, which you will see in a moment. Now, this locomotive was almost at number 1, but the number 1 locomotive I just couldn't leave off the list, or in second place in general. So let's begin. This locomotive was built on June 2nd, 1943, so hopefully on June 2nd I could kind of have a little happy anniversary to the 1218. I think it's turning like 78 or 77, I don't know, but it's getting old. Now, this was built as a A-class. There were 43 or 42 examples, this one being, a later design. And it was retired in 1959 and then sold to Union Carbide Company. I think that's how I pronounce it. Then sold to, I think, the Virginia Museum of Transportation, or it was sold to it was sold to the power plant, then Steamtown, USA, then I think a park or the Virginia Museum of Transportation, then it was sold to a park. And, well, as everyone knows, or as most of you, or as a lot of NNW fans know, in 1989, it was towed from the park and put into service, starting in 1987. And, well, this locomotive was amazing. I mean, just look up Norfolk and Western 1218, and you'll see plenty of videos of this locomotive. It was just amazing all around. But sadly, like everything great, it had to come to an end. It was retired in 1991 because they're like, hey, let's rebuild it to factory fresh condition. Which I'm like, hey, it's fine with that. But then insurance costs, route availability or disavailability, I don't know if that's a word, but it is now, and a derailment kind of forced it into retirement. Well, it was already in retirement. But anyway, it was put back together in 1996 and sat in storage, and then 2001 it was donated to the city of Roanoke, and it's currently at the Virginia Museum of Transportation. So if you're near Roanoke, I think you could definitely go see this locomotive. Now, I would definitely recommend seeing this locomotive. Just by seeing like the images and hearing the whistle, it is it is amazing. Now, you may be wondering what locomotive got beaten, or what locomotive the 12... Sorry, I'm trying to think of a way to say it. What locomotive got first place instead of the 1218? Now, this may surprise you because I think I'm the only person to cover this locomotive. And honestly, it needs to be covered. Well, I'm also the first person to cover the Sonora, but, this is the first, I think, logging locomotive. No, because someone else covered like a Shay. So this is the first narrow gauge logging locomotive. Now, the one that beat 1218 will honestly surprise you, and I've talked about it quite a bit. No, it's not one of my locomotives that I have. It's just a locomotive that is very, very, very dear to my heart. And that is, drumroll please, home, Carroll Park and Western Railroad Climax number 3. Now, this locomotive, as you can see, is, well, it needs some tender love and care, to say the least. Now, let's get on with the history of this locomotive, because it is a doozy. Now, this locomotive was built in December of 1928, and coincidentally, I was born in December of 2007, so, December birthday, yay! But anyway, this locomotive was built as a 2-truck B-class Climax locomotive, or Class B Climax locomotive, and it was used on the Elk River Coal and Lumber Company until, I think, 1950 or in the 1950s, I believe. And there was sat in I think the Duncan engine house, I don't know, for 3 years. Then it was bought. Then it was bought by another railroad, but I would take that with a grain of salt, because in pictures that I saw, it was sold after it was sold to the or after it operated on the Elk River Coal and Lumber Company, it was sold to the Carroll Park and Western Railroad in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. And coincidentally, this locomotive is named Bloomsburg, which is, honestly, it's amazing. So it worked there. I think it worked there. No, it definitely worked there. And it also worked there with, I think it's a 040 switcher tender engine, I think number 117 or 117 or 117, I don't know. But then, in 1977, I think Norman Clark bought the locomotive and brought it to, Roaring Camp Railroads, where it resides today. Now, it needed a great deal of work since being retired in 1972. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. And in 1989, the boiler was sent off to Dixon Boiler Works to, be rebuilt. And as you can see, the locomotive still doesn't have a boiler. But as the locomotive's original boiler was being worked on, some people sadly passed away, including Norman Clark and the owner of Dixon Boiler Works, Mr. Dixon. So the locomotive's boiler is assumed scrap, but I don't know. It could still be out there. But after the sadly passing away of those two people, I think there was another one, but I can't remember. Sorry. The locomotive sat behind the engine house for many, many, many years, and but luckily in 2017, on October 1st of that year, the Climax's pistons, as you can see, the Climax's pistons was turned over on steam. And I think sorry, there's a truck going by. Let me move away from the road, that way you guys can actually hear me kind of good. Alright, there we go, should fix it. But anyway, so I'm just sitting on the go-kart. It was, the pistons of the locomotive, or the valve gear connecting rods, whatever, were moved for the first time in, like, I think since 1972, I believe. But then after that, it was kind of still sat there. But then in 2019, it was moved from the back of the engine house, which is coincidentally where the Daisy is, but I don't think it ran an excursion service, so I don't really count that one. Oh, by the way, the Carroll Park and Western Railroad was an excursion line. It hauled passenger trains up, I think, 2 miles. Anyway, back to the current day locomotive. It was moved from the back of the engine house to the old depot where it resides today by the road. So when you're driving by Roaring Camp, you should definitely look at it, maybe stop, take a picture of it, send a video of the Climax to me, I don't know, but just, you know. And so yeah, this locomotive is currently being restored by, I think it's the RWH Foundation. Sorry about the birds. And I'll leave a link to their website in the description if you want to donate, check it out, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the end of my video of my top 4 favorite retired steam excursion stars. Now, honestly, my all-time favorites are 11A7, 1218, and, well, number 5. Oh, by the way, they're going to renumber it to number 5 because the Kahuku, which is still in service after 130 years, which is pretty impressive, is number 3. So they're going to renumber it to number 5. And why not number 4? Well, they had a number 4. I think it was the Waipahu, but it's currently in Japan. Yeah. So yeah, that's my list of my top 4 retired excursion stars that I enjoy seeing. These birds are crazy. Now I have to move again. Hold on. Yeah, so that's kind of my list of my top 4 retired steam excursion stars that I enjoy seeing. And the birds are back at it again. Okay, I'm going to leave my recording here, so